Hello and welcome to Training Bytes. My name is Mike Gibb from accountsrecovery.net, and with me again is Mary Shores from Mary Shores Communications, who will offer some great insight and advice today. Mary Shores is a second-generation collection agency owner, a best-selling author, and creator of the Collection Advantage online program, which is designed to help collectors create and execute high-converting scripting to increase their cash flow and decrease complaints. Today, and I'm not trying to oversell this or not, but Mary says this is the biggest secret in collections. So Mary, why don't you talk about that and then we'll have a conversation.
Great. Great to see you again, Mike. I'm so excited to be here today. So the biggest secret in collections, I think, is talking about the concept of allies versus enemies. And what I mean by that is that you really want to get the consumer to see your collectors as an ally they want to align with versus an enemy that they want to attack.
That sounds easy enough. Is it easy, or is it something that takes a lot of training and a lot of work to do?
I think that's a good question. I feel like you never want it to feel overwhelming to anyone, but I think what it starts with is a little bit of a mindset shift. So, we have to start with changing the way that we're thinking and the way that we're perceiving, especially the consumers in the situation. But I think once that little perception shift happens, then it's easy just to learn the techniques because it boils down to just understanding the small elements and then being able to build on those.
There's that famous saying, there's always a lot more that unites us than divides us. And I think, looking at what you're talking about with the collector and the consumer, I think, they both want the same thing, right? They both want to get rid of the debt. So I think that's a common goal that maybe collectors can use as they try and adapt this new approach.
So, Mike, really what it boils down to is understanding small mindset shifts that have to happen. And one of those that I love to write about and talk about often is that, great negotiation begins with great collaboration. So oftentimes we see whoever we're speaking to as the opposite player. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I used to play Monopoly all the time. It was actually my favorite game, and I felt like I was pretty good about it. How about you?
I love Monopoly. There are people in my family who now refuse to play with me because they say I'm too ruthless. So I would love to play.
Well, the interesting thing about Monopoly is that there's only one way to win the game. And the only way to win the game is you have to bankrupt all your friends. And I think that that's such an interesting metaphor for how business was like in the 80s and the 90s. It was like dog eat dog kind of world. And we're moving into a much more collaborative world.
It's interesting because I love Monopoly. I love the ruthlessness of it. To your point about always need, there's only one winner, and the only way to win is by bankrupting your opponents. And I kind of feel like when I'm negotiating, be it with my kids or in business, I kind of feel like there has to be a winner and a loser. And I always want to be the one that's winning a negotiation. But to what you're saying, that probably would make me a good collector today, would it?
Well, I think that you can be a good collector with that mindset. But what I'm interested in is taking amazing collectors and leveling them up, like elevating them to how can they become even a better collector. And what I have found is a much better negotiation strategy is when I had this aha moment where I realized that actually we're all players on the same team. And what I mean by that, Mike, is whether you're the consumer, whether you're the collector, whether you're the manager, whether you're the client or the original creditor, or even whether you are the legislator, everybody wants the same thing. They all want the debt to go away, to be resolved. They all want to be, the collector has their own motivations. They want the debt to get paid because that's their job. The manager, they want both the collectors and their clients to be happy. The legislators, they just don't want constituents calling them up and complaining. So it's like we're all actually players on the same team. And I had this aha moment when I realized The other player, the opponent, is actually the debt.
That is a very interesting concept and something I'm trying to wrap my head around. So do you actually advise a collector saying that, I'm on the same side as you, I'm on your team, I want the same thing you do? Are those phrases that a collector should say during a collection call?
I think those are great phrases. I think those are, sort of kindred spirit phrases. Sometimes I refer to myself back in my days when I was a baby collector, but when I was a baby collector, in the first, say, 5-6 years of my business, I would often tell myself, or I would be talking to a consumer and I'd be saying things like, you're going to feel so much better when this debt is taken care of. You're not going to have to think about this anymore. It's not going to be part of your life. You're going to be able to move on. And I think that there's like a supportive attitude, but more than that, it's how you build up from the call in all a certain sequence that I call call flow, but it's a path to an agreement. And when you start the call with certain, I guess I'll call them psychological milestones being met, then you're helping the consumer move towards this path to an agreement. And we can do that using a lot of positive language, which is going to allow the consumer to see us as an ally. So, we all have allies and enemies. And the thing about an ally is that when you are in that position of an ally, the consumer can see you as a trusted advisor. And a trusted advisor or an ally is somebody that not only are they on our side, but they also have a strategy which helps us to meet our goals.
If I'm a collector calling an individual for the first time, getting into that getting into to know someone, getting into a conversation with someone, how do you, because you don't have a lot of time, you've got to quickly convince them that you're an ally. Can you give some example or an example of how that might be accomplished?
I think that a good first step is just the awareness that having a debt in the first place is actually a trigger. So the consumer could be entering that call situation already triggered. So if they're getting this call and it's a surprise, or, they're in the middle of something else, their initial reaction could be strong. It could be a on edge type of a reaction. So the first thing for the collector to understand is to not react to that edginess. It's taking a step back, putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, understanding that they're just having a stressful moment because it's the debt that is very triggering. And then when we can do something, give that consumer an acknowledgement that, this is challenging for them. That allows them just to sort of take a breath and realize that they're not going to be attacked. That's sort of the first step. And then from there, you really want to use positive languaging to pump them up and then continue to solidify that relationship as an ally.
Well, Mary, as always, great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate your time. Look forward to having you back for another episode soon. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mike.